and welcome to Messages of Hope. I'm Jill Lublin, author of 3 best-selling books, and tonight I'm thrilled and delighted to introduce you to our guest, Jeff Eben.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So Jeff is the author of, also, funny enough, 3 books, I think, yes?
But no bestsellers, so you've got me there.
And then additionally, he speaks all over the country, and I know you talk about your story. So I want to talk to you about your story right now.
You betcha.
Now, obviously, you're sitting in a wheelchair here, and you had an accident at the age of 16,
I did,
right?
yeah. This was not the big plan. When I was young, I thought I'd be a young athlete and wanted to be a football player and go to college and play football, so I was working on that respect. October 2nd, 1977, actually, some 34 years ago, I was 16, and a friend of mine took me water skiing for the day, and I, through the course of the day, was learning how to ski, and I fell. Went head first into the water and hit a boulder head first, about 40 miles an hour.
Ooh.
And broke my neck in 3 places, the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th cervical vertebrae, and it left me paralyzed from the chest down. So I've spent the last, like I said, 30-some years called a C4-5 quadriplegic, and had to kind of rebuild my life from there.
Yeah, so you were planning on going into professional athlete, right?
What I really thought was, we lived kind of poor, and I thought that my ticket out of poverty would be playing athletics and getting a college education provided by sports. So I put all my eggs in that basket and did all the things that I could do to try and be a prospect and hope to get a scholarship. And let's say my junior year in high school was the year things started to fall into place for me. So I thought I was on the right path, and then had my accident and had a sudden change in life.
Now, you told me earlier about a coach who you
Right.
say saved your life.
No question about it. Growing up, my father was out of the home, and so I grew up with just my mother, and I really had a father figure enter my life as a football coach, and even before my accident, I had really kind of taken a real leadership role in my life. But when I got injured, he came to my side. And
this is your coach who was helping you?
Yeah, his name is Coach Bohan. In fact, I always use his name because he was such an integral part of my life. But I was an offensive lineman, and he was our position coach. So I spent a lot of time with him every day. And when I got injured, he came to the hospital. And it was just an interesting time because he wasn't one of those guys that ever came and said, "How are you?" or "I'm sorry that you're hurt." He had this thing that he said to me every day. And he came in and it was, "Hey, Jeff, how many wins have you had today?" And at that time, I didn't understand what he was doing, but it sort of became the thing he and I did every day. And it was interesting how that message ended up kind of transforming my recovery. And he stayed by my side every day for like 2 years, 6 months in the hospital, and then when I got back out of the hospital, he continued to come, and he really sheltered me through and shepherded me through this process. And his message, which I thought was kind of silly at the time, became sort of this mantra that really provided me not only the strength to get through that particular time, but has really been the foundation of everything I've done since.
Well, when this guy comes to you and says, "Well, how many wins have you had today?" I mean, come on, what did you really think? You're 16 years old.
It's kind of funny too, because I still had that football player, here's my coach come in mentality, and he was a big, imposing guy, and he would come into the room and like lean way over and put his face in there. So I still had this little vision, like I was afraid of him, and I was kind of like, "What?" And he would scream it to me, and I remember telling my mother the first night, I said, "Man, don't let him come back. He's crazy." And I just thought I genuinely thought he was certifiable.
He would scream that
Scream it
question.
loud, loud, loud. Intensive care is quiet too, like nobody's moving around, And he would just yell it, and people all over intensive care would, and he was just obnoxious. But he had a reason for what he did, and it took me a while to understand it. I just thought he was a pain in the neck, and I thought he was like really inappropriate, because I'm like, "Come on, man, like feel sorry for me, hold me, and tell me it's going to be okay." And he would have none of that, So it was really, actually, I look back on it, it was kind of comical, and but he was very serious. He had a reason for what he was doing,
for you to focus on the wins.
His deal was like because in that scenario, "How are you?" is an opportunity for me to tell him, and at that particular moment, "How are you?" means my neck hurts, my body hurts, my life hurts, everything's wrong. He didn't want to hear it.
Right.
So he never gave me the opportunity. He just said, "How many wins have you had today?" And the first couple of times I would say, Coach, there's no hope for me to walk. There's no way I'm gonna, I can't play football anymore. And he called it the list. I made the no hope list. And his line to me every day when he left was, I know Jeff Eben, and you're not gonna let the no hopes win. And he would say that every single day, and just be like stuck into my head. How many wins have you had today? Don't let the no hopes win. And I mean, it was every single day, and I was just like, God, enough. But at some point, I got it. And I understood what he was saying.
Yeah, I mean, you're a young kid, but it's a powerful message. I love the no hope list, but what started going on your hope list?
Well, it started to be, I had to figure out sort of what he was, it took me probably 3 or 4 months before I was ready to hear him. Because at first it was just, and there's a lot of denial, like this isn't happening, I'm going to get up and walk out of here in 3 days. And you're just kind of angry, and more importantly, at that age, I didn't have the tools and the emotional maturity to really deal with it.
Sure.
So you just sit, it's dark and scary. You just lay there. So it was probably 3 or 4 months before I actually kind of got the courage or maybe the drive to kind of think about how many wins you have there. I don't know, maybe 1. And so, but
what was
winning,
your first win? Do you remember?
Yeah, I can remember the one I can actually tell you in public on TV. but I remember sitting there and I couldn't move my arms, and I used to get really bad itches on my nose, and I would lay in bed like this, and I would itch, and it was awful because I couldn't scratch it, and I would lay in bed at night, and I would scream for the nurses, and they would come in. I was like, "Could you scratch my nose?" And they didn't appreciate that too much. So it was over the period of time I was able to start maneuvering my arms up, because I could move my bicep a little, and I started to move it, and I remember the first night I got my hand up there and scratched it. And I was so euphoric, that I was able to actually relieve the itch and actually scratch my nose. It became the big, I could scratch my nose, and that was like, woohoo. So, but winning became actually, for me, we defined it, or sort of for myself and with my coach's help, we defined it as doing one thing a day better than I had done it the previous day. And I had 3 therapies a day that I went to, and every therapy became, you have to do one thing in therapy, farther, faster, better, stronger than you did the day before. So it actually kind of turned into a plan. Yeah. And that became, and then he would come at night and I would report, how many wins. Well, today I won this. So it became sort of a strategic plan.
What an amazing man to be at your side, literally, with that kind of attitude and imprinting that attitude into you, so that now that actually became your book, didn't it?
It really did. My story really is his story. And what I tell when I travel and speak, I look at it more like I'm carrying on my coach's story. He passed away about 3 years ago in a kind of a weird accident, water skiing of all things.
No.
Isn't it? I mean, you can't write that stuff. It's like you can't make that up. It was bizarrely ironic. And so I did the eulogy at his funeral, and I remember telling people I just felt like my mission in life is really to carry on his story and his legacy. And so it's been about him, for me. And I wear these wristbands, And
what do they say?
one of the white ones says, "How many wins have you had today?" And so I wear that to remind me of who I am and what I represent. The blue and gold one is for him. That was our school colors. And he used to have a saying when he coached it, said hot dog brownie, and we never knew what it meant. But that was his story. So I wear this band that says hot dog brownie, which reminds me of him. So.
Was that his 2 favorite foods?
No, it could have been. He said he had a dog named Brownie, and so that's what he would say. We never figured it out. But he said it. So when we imitated him, it was always what he said. But I wear these because it reminds me. I always remember. I always think, people need good mentors and leaders, and so that reminds me of mine. And then my message or the thing that drives me, the how many wins concept, I keep on my wrist. So I always have these if I'm feeling bad or if I feel like, if I'm discouraged or feeling like maybe things aren't going, I always have this. It reminds me every day, it keeps me in touch. So.
Well, then I understand you actually went into education.
I did. I did.
And you mentioned about building a school that you became principal
I
of.
did, yeah. I spent, I was in education for 21 years. I probably spent the first 7 or 8, teaching and doing some stuff, and then doing some different types of jobs. And I became an administrator with the idea that I could probably lead others at something. And so I actually became an elementary school principal, and I did that job and enjoyed it. And then I had the opportunity to build a high school. and be the principal of the high school. So when I say build it, literally work the construction project,
Wow.
order all the stuff, hire all the teachers.
From the foundation up, literally.
Literally from the dirt. When I got the job, I had a blueprint and a couple acres of dirt. And so working with all the folks to build it, order all the books, everything. But it was interesting, the project was easy, the construction project. But somewhere in the course of the project, I realized schools, and high schools particularly, because our school was 3,000 kids. And when you're dealing with a small community like that, it has to stand for something. And schools, what kids remember about their high school experience is some unique thing that made them special, that was their community. So I wanted to have a community that our kids thought, this is our community. And I looked around and I said, what are we going to stand for? And it drove me eventually back to my life and said, what did I learn at 16 that I wanted to give to somebody else? Well, for me, there was two things. One is the power of this thing called hope. And two, from my coach, what can we accomplish with the gift of unconditional love? So hope and love became the two things that I thought our culture would stand for and that our kids would remember. So we named it Feel the Love. And so the name of our school was Clovis East High School, Feel the Love.
That was your tagline for
the school? It was our tagline. People thought I was crazy. You can't get away with that with high school kids, but they liked it.
They liked it.
Yeah, they more importantly, they understood it. I was one of those guys that I thought, someday when they're 25, they're going to wake up and go, I know what he was talking about. But they didn't. They understood it. They got it. Like when they graduated, they would say, we understand. When we came in, we thought he was crazy, but when we left, we understood what he meant.
So what was your intention with that? Is it to train young people in a different way?
Well, we were dealing with a population of young people that knew what it was like to struggle. We had a high poverty school. We had schools that didn't have a lot of education in their background. There were young kids who were trying to find some sense of place in the world. And so my message to them and to my staff as well, because the adults have to live it too.
Yes.
Was if we believed in our kids bigger than they could believe in themselves, and if we loved them unconditionally, which is the things my coach taught me, if we could do that for them, maybe they would get that sense of hope and see their future for themselves. Because they don't always see it at 15, particularly when they're struggling. They don't see themselves 10 years from now. And I wanted them to see themselves. For me, hope was see yourself 20 years from now being successful somewhere. And whatever that meant, having a family, being happy. And if I could get them to see that, to me, I was being a good educator.
So hope always was at the center forefront
That's
of
all it was.
Your message.
That was what it was about. And I was openly about it. I said, we are a school that's going to believe in the power of hope.
What inspired that? Is it because of what you went through? Why
It
hope?
was, you have to, I looked at leadership as this, and I learned this along the way, that if you're going to lead a culture, whether it's in your office, whether it's coach of your team, because I was a coach for years and coached my teams, and whether you're running a corporation, in your case, going out and doing workshops and seminars, if you're going to lead a culture, somewhere in that culture, there has to be a piece of you in it. And if you're going to lead people, they're going to take that piece of you with them. And so I always thought, so if I'm going to build a school, the school had to reflect a piece of me that I was willing to share with everybody else. And so being a high school, I looked back to my high school experience and said, what did I learn here? That is my thing that I want to give to somebody else. Hope, unconditional love. That was it.
Oh, beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
Let me just ask you, have kids come back to you and said, what have they said to you?
Every day. I talk to kids every day. The power of Facebook now.
Yes.
Social media has been my friend, and I connect with my kids, former students, every day.
What are some of the best stories?
Well, they do, they get it. They understand, and you hear a